The seasonal models are in with their latest winter 2025-26 forecast, and I'm going to show them to you in just a moment. That's where we're going to start the show today. Welcome in, everyone. My name is Jason. I'm glad that you are here to track the weather with me on this Monday, October the 6th, as we start another work week together. This image that I'm showing you here, folks, is the snow cover extent so far over the northern hemisphere as we head into the winter. This is the red line is 2025-2026. That's our winter upcoming, of course. Last year is the green line here that you see, the big fat green line, and you can see that we're tracking on the left side of that, which means we're racking up so far at this point in the season more snow cover in the northern hemisphere than last year. We're running about at the middle of the pack, and it goes all the way back to 2005, 2006. And here is the northern hemispheric view. You can see the yellow is ice, white is snow here in Greenland, white is snow here in Siberia, and a little bit of snow up here in Alaska and northwest Canada. Canada should see that snow cover build as we go through the week, folks, and that's good as we build that snow cover in Canada. As air comes out of the north, it will travel over snowpack, keeping it colder. If you're a winter fan in the U.S., you want to see plenty of snow cover to your north to allow cold air to intrude in without moderating all that much. This is a typical La Nina pattern for the winter, folks, and as you know, it's likely that we're headed into another La Nina yet again, so we're going to be dealing with that. What does that mean? Well, tends to put a big high pressure out here toward Alaska in the Gulf of Alaska, which would keep the jet stream bottled up here, and then it would essentially track into western Canada and into the northern United States and track along the north and not really have much of a subtropical jet stream to speak of, so dry conditions would prevail along the south, along with warmer conditions south of the main jet stream flow. Cold would intrude into the northern United States, and with flow coming in out of the Pacific, probably keep you all wetter than normal up there. That's typical La Nina, and then you get your storm track through the Ohio Valley and up into the northeast. And as the jet stream kind of wavers back and forth, you find wet conditions and snowy, and sometimes you're on the mild side of the jet, sometimes you're on the cool side of the jet here in the northeast, but generally we would find less snow across the south and drier as well, with cooler conditions prevailing across the north, and a little bit of a signal for wetter conditions in the west and maybe into the Ohio Valley as well. So that's what we're looking at here, folks. Now what you're looking at is the Euro seasonal forecast for December, January, and February. And if you're a fan of winter, barf, this is terrible. This is above normal. We're looking at a general 1 to 2 degrees above normal for much of the southern United States. Kind of looks a little bit like La Nina, doesn't it, with the more average anomalies up here across the north. That's the temperature anomaly. Precipitation-wise, kind of that same signal with La Nina, wet here across the north, wet across the Ohio Valley, and dry across the south. So looks like the European seasonal is going straight climo. I guess a little bit of good news is it does like snowfall. This is from Ryan Maui in his Twitter feed. He posted this image, but this is the snowfall map, the seasonal forecast snowfall map, issued October the 1st, and there's the bulk of the snow out here in the Rockies and the Cascades, Sierra Nevadas, and you head across the north and then up into the interior sections of the northeast. That's where the bulk of your snowfall would be, and then really when you get down here into south of the Mason-Dixon line and on back toward south of the Panhandle of Texas, you're not finding all that much in the way of snow. And again, this is a seasonal model, so do not hold fast to this prognostication. It just gives you an idea of what the Euro is thinking, and certainly we're going to see variability to the winter, and I expect there will be more variability than just following your traditional La Nina climo, folks. So that's what we're looking at. This is the Canadian seasonal model, and it tends to look a little bit like the Euro too, except it's a little bit cooler across the north. You see some blues here instead of all whites, and the yellow and orange anomalies are pushed a little farther south, but still bulk of the southern half of the country is above normal according to the Canadian model, and drier than normal across the north. It loses the wetter than normal signal that the Euro had and La Nina climo has here in the northwest. We'll see what the next month run has, but that's what that's looking like, wetter across the north. So this would bode a little bit better for folks across the Great Lakes region, Midwest, and up into the northern parts of the country here in the Northeast to have a banger of a winter, maybe even here in New England as well, upper Mid-Atlantic maybe. That's what the Canadian's looking like. My suspicion is that, as I said, we're going to see some variability. We've got the stratosphere we need to pay attention to as we get into the winter months and understand if it's going to be susceptible to being perturbed, and as stratospheric warming takes place, sometimes you get a weakening of the big stratospheric polar vortex. Sometimes it can reverse, and that would produce blocking across the north. We've seen a lot of blocking here and ridging up in Canada. That's good if you want the jet stream to kind of buckle south. And so we'll watch those things as we get on into the season, folks. But I want to show you kind of the latest stuff, what's going on there, and lead the show with that. We're going to get into the tropics here in a second, kind of show you what's happening out there. We don't have any imminent threats. We're going to look at that, as well as the week ahead forecast, temperatures, precipitation, all that good stuff coming right up. We'll wrap up with solar weather. But first, I've got your weather IQ questions coming right now. If you haven't yet joined the team, folks, hit the subscribe button down below and sign on. We are over 6,000 subscribers, so I really want to thank you for all the support. We've grown rapidly. Hit the like button and turn on those notifications by ringing the bell. And if there's anything I can be in prayer about, please put it in the comments section. I want to support you as well, and any other questions or comments that you want to have, feel free. I read it and respond to all of those. Right now, they've got your weather IQ, and here it is. What is considered to be the most visible planet during the month of October? Here are your choices: Mars, Jupiter, Venus, or Hoth. If you know the answer, type it in the comment section. I bet you can eliminate one of those. So really, you have a fairly good shot at getting it. 33.3333% if you eliminate one obvious answer. I'll have the answer at the end of the show. If you know it, type it in the comments. Otherwise, we're getting ready to get into the week ahead forecast right now. What I tell you about big ridging up in Canada, folks, there it is right there. Look at this big anomaly up here, and that means you got a trough out here in the west. Usually when you see big heights in the east, you got low heights out west, and that's what we've got, folks. We've got a trough coming into the west, and separating these two air masses is a frontal boundary that is pushing through. It's bringing some rain along it and some cooler air behind it. The punch of the cool air will actually go across the north. You can kind of see that as we play this out into motion. This is Monday. We'll head into tomorrow, and there the flow kind of flattens a bit, and that usually tells you that unless you've got flow straight out of the north, which we don't here, you're going to see that tail end of the frontal boundary across the southern half of the country be a little slower to get through. So there's Tuesday, and then to Wednesday, and we've got some whites and some blues showing up here along the east coast, replacing all those reds. That means cooler weather, and along that front, going to see some rain as well, and more high heights coming back into Canada, central Canada, and building into the northeast as we get on in toward the end of the week. And look what's happening down here in the southeast, folks. We've got a little bit of a cutoff forming down here. Now, this is in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, and there's a surface reflection of a low. Most of the modeling as we approach the weekend tries to develop something off the coast, and some of the modeling and some of the ensemble members bring it down here from the Bahamas, and some sort of use this upper-level energy to interact with some energy hanging off the coast along that stalled kind of frontal boundary, and had easterly flow, big high pressure out in the Atlantic, and that's pushing a lot of moisture in. And so all of that kind of interacts together to create a little bit of a storm system off the coast, and there's some disagreement within the models about where this is going to go. If I'm issuing a forecast this weekend, that's what I'm talking about this weekend, I don't really have a full faith that this is going to come ashore. Some of the models are bringing it ashore here in the south, and some are bringing it ashore here in the mid-Atlantic and northeast, and some are keeping it offshore. So I'd go cloudy with a chance of precipitation along eastern sections of much of the east coast from the upper southeast to the north. So watch that as we go on out here. This is Friday. By the time we get into the weekend, we've got another little short wave. You can see this dip in the jet up here in the north coming down over Wisconsin. And look what happens. We get on out here into Saturday afternoon. We start to get another little cutoff low here over the southeast along with that short wave that cuts off, dipping in, and you get this little Fujiwara effect sort of in the mid-levels, and that slingshots that low back in here into the upper southeast, lower mid-Atlantic. And that's the European solution that has an idea that this thing is going to kind of come in as we work toward later in the weekend, bring unsettled conditions, some wind and coastal erosion out here. My guess is we're going to see coastal erosion and wind along the coast with showers too, but how far inland that rain pushes as we work to the weekend, that's going to be the big weather story as we go through the week. And we're going to have to pay attention to what these models show, but eventually we've got another trough working back into the west, bringing unsettled conditions cooler out there as we head into late in the weekend with more ridging coming across the country. It's going to be variable, particularly across the north. Across the south, it may stay a little bit warmer than normal. Here's your sort of forecast precipitation. We'll roll this back. We get into this evening. We see plenty of rain across the Tennessee Valley. There's that front. You can pick that out pretty easily, and some rain across Florida and the southeast coast. As that onshore flow continues, we get on into tomorrow. Heavier rain moves up into the the Tennessee Valley, the Cumberland Plateau, the Southern Appalachians. That frontal boundary works from the Ohio Valley into the East Coast, and then off the East Coast, by the time we get into Wednesday afternoon, with the exception of the Southeast, that's where we're going to find the rain. More moisture coming into the Southwest, by the way, as we get on into Thursday, into the morning hours, and a new system trying to work into the West Coast, bring some rain out there. And then look what's happening off the Southeast coast. We're going to see plenty of moisture getting its act together and start to, as high pressure builds in and kind of wedges down, we're going to see that hold this area of disturbed weather kind of in place, and more rain coming into the west in California, a little hurricane action out here in the eastern Pacific, and it will roll into the southwest, bring some tropical moisture in there as we get on into the weekend. And there's that low pressure. Look, the European just sort of rides it up the coast and tries to pivot it in here into the mid-Atlantic, and then just kind of stalls it out as we get into next week. So a lot of question marks about this system. Don't take this solution for granted yet, but definitely stay weather aware as we get on toward the weekend, and I'll keep you posted on what happens there. We get a little bit more rain coming in as we go through the week. There is your anomaly map. So this is where the temperatures are above and below normal. The darker the reds, the more above. The darker the blues, the more below. As we get to Monday afternoon, you can see where the below normal temperatures are up here in the northern plains down into the Rocky Mountains, and plenty of warmth along the east. As we get on into Wednesday, though, we can start to see that cool air push into the Midwest, Ohio Valley, finally into the Northeast, and really not so much south, but a little bit more toward normal as we get on in toward the Tennessee Valley and the southeast. More warm air coming in on the backside of that trough as that high brings cooler temperatures down the slopes of the Alps. We get another wedging round, and return flow around that sets up warm air to the west as we get into Friday. And there is Friday into Saturday, and we see plenty of clouds and maybe some rain starting to form here along the coast, keeping us a little bit cooler than normal as we head into the weekend, warming back up in the plains, cooling back off in the west as a new system works in up there. So that kind of gives you an idea of what to expect as we roll this along and take a look at 24-hour increments in terms of precipitation. Got plenty of rain here in the Tennessee Valley through the course of today, up along the Kentucky-Indiana border there. Maybe upwards of a couple of inches of rain as we roll this along and look at Wednesday. That area shifts into eastern Kentucky and western Virginia. Going to see rain here in the interior sections of the Northeast too. Little system trailing back here into the panhandle of Texas too as we get on into Thursday. For the day. I'm sorry, and I've been talking a day ahead. This is basically all day Wednesday. Let me roll this back just so you can see that, because I didn't do a great job of that. That is Wednesday, folks. This is your precipitation for Tuesday. This is Tuesday. Gosh, I get it right here in a minute. There's Tuesday. That's what I mean to say. Tuesday precipitation, and then we go on into Wednesday. This is Wednesday's precipitation, so we'll expect to see plenty of rain, coastal sections back into the interior sections of the southeast, and that will still be pushing through, so it's not going to stick around. We get on into Thursday. It'll hang up. That frontal boundary probably is going to hang up here off the coast of the southeast, so Georgia, South Carolina, you're going to find yourself still in the rainy conditions, and then that'll just build through the weekend. Additional energy pushes out west, so we'll see more rain return out there. So that's how it'll play out over the course of the next couple of days. Today, you've got that frontal boundary back here in the Midwest. Might see some severe weather, just isolated in spots from Iowa back into parts of Missouri and Kansas. Maybe a couple of wind reports and hail reports, not out of the question. Heavy rain back through the mid-Mississippi Valley here. High pressure will be working in behind that front. Freeze warnings and frost advisories are up here in the northern plains, particularly North Dakota back into Wyoming. Going to have some cool temperatures to start our week, and we get on a better display. I can show you the highs. Highs in the 80s. When you get to the far south and southern tier, you get into the 80s and 90s, maybe some 90s in Texas, but going to be muggy down here. 80s all the way up in New England, 60s behind that front. Getting on into tomorrow, 60s and 70s back here in the Ohio Valley, pushing back up into the plains. Very chilly here across the northern border, warming up out west, still warm in the east and south. And then we get on into Wednesday, warmth returning back into the plains, cooling off here in the Great Lakes and northern parts of the Northeast. Highs in the 50s, 80s get pushed to the south, and that's what it looks like as we get on into the week. Far as temperatures go, highs at least, lows very, very cool as we start the day this morning. Look up here, and then we get on into tomorrow morning, and look at that, still very chilly. Going to see low temperatures much below freezing, especially down here in the Rockies, but everybody else in the east, a little bit of wedging hanging on across the east coast, so down into the 50s, but to 60 surging back up into the Ohio Valley. And as we get on out into Wednesday, that front will push through and start to cool everybody off a little bit here in the north, and it's going to have a hard time bringing those really cool temperatures into the south. So this is probably as much as we'll see in terms of that, maybe get into the 50s as we get on into Thursday morning. But cool across the north, warm across the south, still above average for parts of the country, folks. That's your week ahead forecast. We're going to wrap things up here by taking a look at the tropics and space weather and have the answer to that IQ question coming right up. Not going to spend a lot of time on the tropical outlook because there's just not a lot going on, at least right now. We have a big tropical wave moving off the coast. It's off the coast of Africa now here in the MDR, and it's moving into an area where we're going to find more favorable conditions for developments. We're going to watch this over the next 7 days. It has a high likelihood of development. Got a frontal boundary out here in the Atlantic and some energy hanging back into the Bahamas, causing some squally weather out there, a little bit of convection here at the Lesser Antilles, and then over in South America and Central America, we've got a lot of convection going on here. We've got that Central American gyre waking up, at least the way it looks on some of the modeling, and when you have this feature down here, we see plenty of convection, some spin in the atmosphere, could easily spin up a tropical system here in the Caribbean or the Gulf over the next couple of weeks, so we've got to watch for that. We've got plenty of warm water down here. Shear will be abating. We still have a favorable background environment that we're moving into for a bit, so we're going to have to watch this area for development even off the southeast coast as well. But here is kind of the main area that we're watching. 70% chance of development now of this depression or this wave as it moves in over the next 7 days. We're going to see a depression form most likely. It's going to move off in the direction of the Lesser Antilles. The northern islands here need to be on alert as we get on several days down the road. And then pay attention here in the Atlantic. It looks like most of the modeling, though, is taking it out. As a matter of fact, if we take a look at the Google DeepMind, we'll start here with this. This is the ensemble, and you can see a lot of members develop the system as we get on out here toward Thursday. We've got a nice tropical depression or storm by that time. Looks like a storm here on most of these members, and most of the members just take it on to the north and out into the Atlantic eventually, and we don't have too much to worry about. It looks like most of them curve it by Bermuda on the east side, so we should be good there. But this little system off the coast, some models like the European wants to develop it down here a little bit farther south and then run it up toward the north. The Google DeepMind really develops everything right off the southeast coast here across off the coast of South and North Carolina, and then just sort of swing, most of its members will swing it out to sea and keep it offshore. A couple of members tag the coastline a little bit, but that's pretty much all that's on the AI model. The European itself, see how it's kind of got a bunch of a little cluster of L's down here between Cuba and Florida, and then we've got that system out here in the Atlantic by the time we get into Thursday. And then on in toward Friday, Lesser Antilles, Northern Islands, you need to pay attention here, but most of the modeling recurves this solution, system, so I'm not really looking for it to be a threat to the United States or even into the islands. And then the European has a couple of camps here with this southeast coast solution. Some of them go straight out to sea, some of them kind of go back toward the shore, and a couple of them make landfall and kind of work into the mid-Atlantic. So definitely something to keep our eyes on. This will be next weekend, late in the weekend, maybe Sunday, Monday, in that time frame. And then we've got a lot of L's sitting down here in that Central American gyre location, so we're going to have to pay attention to that area as we get on out later on in the period. The extra tropical update, folks, and we'll wrap things up with space weather and the answer to that IQ question coming right up. Space weather is an easy update today. Nothing going on at all. The KP is flat. It's down into the green, barely even registering anything after that 5-day solar storm. No solar flaring going off. The only thing here of note is that we've got this big coronal hole. You see this big black spot on the sun. That's going to be facing us in a couple of days and enhancing the solar wind. So I would expect solar storm conditions to prevail again as we head on in toward the end of the week. Sunspots, not a lot going on there, just a couple of green ones that are moving away. Green means they're not all that complex and they're kind of small, and a couple of green ones coming in. As a matter of fact, I click on one of these, we pull the lid back, I barely see anything at all. Just a little bit of positive and a little bit of negative, but nothing going on, no complexity, and it doesn't look like it's growing that way. So nothing to worry about there. We did have a 4.5 earthquake in Italy earlier this morning. Nothing going on around the United States. No volcanoes to speak of, but we are almost at a full moon. That'll happen later today, 99.3%. going up to our harvest moon, full moon status at 11:47 p.m. Some of you farther north may actually see it come up above the horizon to be all big and orange. This is also a supermoon, which is when the full moon occurs at its perigee, its closest point in its orbit to the Earth, and that is happening all together with this October moon. Unfortunately, by the time I can see the moon this afternoon, or it'll be up into the sky by the time it starts to get dark, and so we won't get to see that big orange moon here, so unfortunately. But hey, it's harvest moon, it's fun, it's October, we're getting into fall, it's a great time of year, folks. Hope you enjoy it. And that brings us into the answer to today's IQ question, and here it is. What is considered to be the most visible planet during the month of October? Mars, Jupiter, Venus, or Hoth? And we can certainly rule out Hoth since that is in a galaxy far, far away. And that leaves us with the answer of B, Jupiter. Jupiter is most visible during I believe it is the early morning hours. And Saturn, I think, is visible during the nighttime, the evening hours. I might have those two mixed up, but I think that is right. But Jupiter is considered to be the most visible planet. And also, one more interesting thing that happened way back in 1866 on October the 6th, the Reno gang carried out the first train robbery in the United States. In U.S. history, they robbed a train near Seymour, Indiana, making off with about $13,000 in cash. How about that? Now you know about train robberies, great American history, and now, of course, you know about the weather. And I hope you've enjoyed the show. If you have any questions, put it in the comment section. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow with another Cold Rain's Weather World. In the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful start to your work week. See ya.